Hi, can everyone hear me? Awesome. So I just want to do a quick check so that I can customize this class appropriately. So if this is the first time, give me 1 second. I'm hearing an echo. I can put this back here. Great. So if this is your first time attending any of my classes, just type in +1 on the YouTube comment section so that I can get a sense of the group here. So if this is the first time you're attending a class, just type in +1 on the, okay, so wir montags, Damien. Okay, great. So if you've attended any of my previous Python classes, just enter +2. Okay, cool. So excellent. All right, so if you're new, welcome. And if you have been with us for the past 2 weeks, good to have you back here as well. So let me just give you a quick introduction as to who I am and what this class is going to be about. So my name is Giri. I go by GPAL. I'm a self-taught programmer. And back in March 2018, I ran a 4-week Intro to Python course. And over the last 2 weeks, I've been running short 2-hour classes on introduction to data science. So that's what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks, and I'm very interested in learning and teaching programming. This is what I enjoy doing, and it's good to be doing it right now. So this week, we're going to be focusing on the fundamentals of SQL. We're going to really look at how we can retrieve and filter data from a single table. I was taking a look at the survey results. It seems that the vast majority of you have close to little background in SQL. So the focus is going to be really on mastering the fundamentals of SQL this week. And subsequent classes, we're going to be learning about things like inner joins and outer joins so that you can retrieve data from multiple tables. So that's not going to be a focus for this week. If we have time, I would briefly show you how it works, but otherwise we're going to be doing that in the subsequent weeks. So this week, just the fundamentals. And since some of you are new, let me just explain very quickly the 3 principles that matter to me when it comes to teaching. First of all, I think that we learn best by practice. So I'm not going to be talking that very much. A lot of the class is going to be practicing and getting feedback. There's going to be like a mini quiz where you can try out the SQL skills that you have picked up. The next thing I believe is the 80-20 rule. And the idea is that we're not going to get into the intricacies of SQL. We're going to really focus on the broad ideas so that you get a grasp of what this whole SQL thing is about. And the last thing that I'm very passionate about is the idea of peer-to-peer learning. And you're going to see that very quickly. It's that I think we learn best when we learn as a community. So we're going to be sharing questions, helping each other. I think it's going to make learning a lot more fun and effective and meaningful for all of us. And for those who are new, there are going to be 2 tools we're going to be using today. First is the Discord server app. And second is this website called data.world, which is going to be the place where we are going to be coding. So Discord, for those who are new, is the place where we ask questions. And it's also the place where I'll be posting all the updates. So that's the go-to place. And if you're new and if you haven't signed up yet, this is the link for you to sign up into our Discord server app. And for those, since we have a number of people who are new, let me just show you the places that are really important for you. So all the class announcements would go onto this channel. And this is the most important channel for today. If you have any questions, during the class, post it here. I'll be answering. We have people who will be helping out as well. So this is the place where you post all your questions related to the class. So the programming exercise channel specifically. So that's our Discord server app. If you haven't signed up, go ahead and sign up for it right now. The next tool that we're going to be using is called data.world. The nice thing about data.world is that it allows us to code on the browser itself. So it allows you to execute these SQL queries without downloading anything. And another upshot of it is that it has access to all these cool databases, and it's free. So let's go ahead, let's sign up, and let's perform our first query on Data World. So if you haven't signed up, go to data.world. Let me type it out on the... Go to data.world. When you have signed up, just give me a heads up, and then we can execute our first query. All right, when you're signed up, just drop me a message so that I know that we can move on to the next part. All right, so go ahead, signed up, okay. Excellent. So I'm seeing a stream of yeses, great. Okay, so now I'm going to share with you the link to the database that we're going to be playing with. So after you have signed up, take a look at the link that I'm sharing with you right now on the Discord server app as well as our YouTube channel. So we're going to be looking at this video games sales database. That's what we're going to be querying against. So take a look at that specific link that I just shared with you. So if you go to that link, go to the top right-hand corner and click the query button. Right. Go to the top right-hand corner and click the query button. Probably you see something like this. Click query. Right. Has everybody gotten there? Okay, excellent. So I'm hearing that you're all on the query page. Awesome. So great. So this is where we're going to be coding. And let me just quickly show you how this works, and then I'll explain what we're doing. So let's just go ahead and say run query. So if you run the query, you should see all these results pop up. Right. Now let me explain. Now we're going to dive into the basics of SQL already. So let me explain what's happening here. So there's this database, this called VG Sales Global, which contains a number of different columns, right? So what are the columns that we have here? We have the name of the video game. We have the platform that it's based in, the year that it was published, the genre, the publisher, is it Electronic Arts, EA, Atari, and then we have the number of units sold by continent. by North America, in Europe, in Japan, and other places of the world. And then there's a total number of units sold globally. So that's the database that we're going to be querying. And what are we doing here? When we say select as, and we put this is called the wildcard operator. What's happening is that it's pulling all the columns from this specific table. And it's saying limit to the first 5,000 rows, right? And that's what we're doing. So we can take away this, and this is going to pull us all the rows. So take this out and go ahead, try it out, and run query. Right? So now it says that it's showing just the first 10,000 rows because there's a limit to how many rows you can display on data.world. So we're seeing the first 10,000 rows here. So you could change the limit. You can, let's say you just want the top 10 and you want 10 entries. So you just say limit 10 and then you can run the query. So there are a few things I want to emphasize here. The most critical thing here is the select keyword. That's going to be part of practically every single SQL query. You're saying, I want this kind of data. And the next part you need to understand here is the from. This is where the name of the table would go in. In this case, there's just one table. So that's why this is it. But you can also query from multiple tables, but that's not what we're going to focus on today. So that's just a very basic first run with an SQL query. We're going to add a few more layers of complexity to it right now. So in this case, when we put in the wildcard operator, we're getting every single column. But let's say we just want to know the name and the year, okay? If that's the case, what we do is we take the name of the column and we key it in here. So I can say name, and I want, let's say, the year. And I can run query. So this is a lot neater, right? Because we have all these different columns, but suppose we just want certain columns to display. If that's the case, you just need to key in the column name here, select, and the name of the columns. And let's say I want to get also the global sales, right? If that's the case, I just put a comma, put global underscore sales. So this looks a lot neater. So with SQL, the point I want to make here is that you can select the columns that you want displayed. So that's a nice part of it. Now, does anybody have any questions about this before we move on? I don't want to move too fast or too slow. Is everybody okay right now? Any questions about selection of columns? All right, let's keep going then. Great. So now let's go back and let's select everything from the list again. Let's run this query again. So one of the things that you would have realized is that, for example, in the case of, let's say you have a question, let's say you want to know what are the different platforms that are represented in the database, right? One of the things that you can do is to say, look, select platform from VG Sales Global. And let's say we run the query. It's listing everything out, but there's a problem, right? You see some duplication, right? XB is is duplicated here. You have PSP here and then PSP below as well. Suppose you want to know what are the distinct platforms that are represented within the database. So the way that you go about doing that is by adding the keyword distinct. Key in the word distinct. You run the query, you're going to be able to see just the distinct platforms represented within the database. So the next point here is that distinct allows you to just display the unique entries from the database. So instead of platform, you can also say, look, I want to know what are the distinct publishers that are represented within the database. So you could do this, publisher, run the query again, and now you see just the publishers. And these are all unique publishers. You don't see any duplication of the data. So distinct is a very helpful keyword to take away all the duplication of results. Now, all this while we haven't been, okay, so all this while we haven't been filtering the results. We're just pulling out the data as it is. Suppose you want to add some conditions to control the data that you get outputted. So essentially you want to filter. Let's see how to do that. Once again, let's go back and get all the data. And I want to show you how to do this. Suppose we want to know what are the video games that have sold more than, let's say, 20 million units. So in this case, just in case you're wondering, all these different columns, it's the number of million units sold. So for example, Wii Sports, when it says 82.74, it's the number of millions of units sold. Let's say I want to know what are the names of video games that have sold more than 20 million global sales. How can I do that? So what you do is you first stipulate what data you want outputted. So in this case, it's name from the name of the table, but you add a control condition. And how do you do that? You add the keyword where, and the condition is that the global sales needs to be more than 20 million, right? So we say global sales more than 20 million. Okay. Run the query, and you find that it outputs just the names of the video games that have sold more than 20 million units. So that's a very neat feature. Any questions about this? Is everybody doing well? Okay, so where allows you to filter out the results. So suppose I also want to, I mean, this is kind of reiterating the concept. Suppose I want to know, I want to get the name as well as I want to see the global sales. So in that case, I just put global underscore sales, and I can see the data. Great. Now, right now, we have just put in one condition, but it is completely possible for us to put in multiple conditions as well. Let's say I want to know the video games that have sold more than 20 million units, but less than 30 million units. So in that case, what I do is I just put in an AND operator and say, look, global sales needs to be less than 30 million. I want to know what are the video games that have sold more than 20 million units, but less than 30 million units. So I just put in the AND operator here. And if you run the query, you find that it filters out the results that have more than 30, but less than 20. So AND allows you to string together multiple conditions. So go ahead and try that out right now. And in addition to AND, you also have the OR operator. Let's say I want to know what are the video games that have sold more than 20 million units, or I also want to know, I'm also cool with inclusion of with video games that have sold let's say more than 10 million units in Europe, right? So if that's the case, I put Europe EU underscore sales more than 10 million, right? And let's say I want to see the EU sales figure, the column as well. Okay. So in this case, if either of this condition is met for that row is displayed. So the global sales, if it's above 20 million, fine, the row gets displayed. Otherwise, as long as EU sales, the number of units sold is more than 10 million, this row also gets displayed. So OR is also an operator that allows you to filter out results. Any questions about AND or OR? Now, let me take a look at the questions. Cool. So there are a number of basic relational operators. In this case, I've used more, or you can also use less. Now, these are all perfectly reasonable operators, but there are other operators, like you can also put more or equal to. So this is also fine. You can also write not, right? This is not. This is also not, right? You can also do that. You can put equal as well. So these are all completely legal operators that you can attach to within the where condition. Now, one of the things that you would have realized is, let's say we go back to the global sales. We want to pull out the video games that have sold more than 20 million units. Let's take a look at that. And I want to show you something else here. One of the things that you would realize is that the data isn't ordered in a neat manner. For example, the numbers jump. You have 80 million at the top, 40 million later, and then you have 20 million, and then you have 30 million here. That's not great. You want to order the results so that you can see exactly what's going on. And the way that you go about doing that is you add the order by clause. So you just type in order by, and then you put in the condition, right? Let's say the condition is global sales. Now, by default, what's going to happen with SQL is that if you key in global sales as the condition, it's going to rank it in ascending order. And by ascending order, what that means is that it's going to start with the smallest value, and then it's going to move to the lowest value. So smallest value, and then it's going to go into the largest value. So that's going to be the default. So let's take a look at that, and then let's change the condition. So take a look at what we can get here. It's arranging it by ascending order. It starts with the smallest, and then it goes to the biggest number. What do we do if we want to get it in descending order? Meaning I want to have the largest number at the top, and then I want to move on to the smallest number. The way you do that is you add the keyword DESC, and let's run the query. Now, when you take a look at it, what you find is that it displays the highest value at the top, and then it moves down to the bottom. So order by allows you to arrange the results. Any questions about this? Is everybody doing fine? All's good? Any questions? Order by, anything that we have covered? Otherwise, we can move on to take a look at how we can analyze the data. And how can you sum up the data? How can you take averages and so on? Great. Seems clear? Good. Okay, so I'm going to show you how you can start to aggregate the data right now. I'm going to show you a number of different functions that allow you to make sense of the data. So once again, let's go back to the default so that we can see all the different columns. Okay, suppose you want to know let's say you want to know the number of platforms that are represented in this database. How can we go about doing that? One way to do that is to use the keyword count. So let me show you how that works. Put count, and then you key in platform from VG sales. It's going to add up all the platforms, but remember there's some platforms that are duplicated. So we need to put in distinct platform here. So select count platform from VG Sales Global. Run the query. You find that the total number of platforms is 31. Right? Let's say we want to know the total number of genres that are represented. Right? We key in select distinct genre from VG Sales Global, and you run the query. So we know that there are 12 distinct genres of video games represented in the database. But take a look at what happens when we take away the word distinct. It's just going to show you the total number of rows almost. So it shows you 16,598, which isn't accurate, right? So that's why the keyword distinct is extremely critical here, so that you don't get duplicated results. So count allows you to add up the values. Let's say I want to know. Let's go back and let's take a look at all the columns again. All right. So let's take a look at the North American sales, right? Let's say I want to know what's the total sum of video game units sold in North America. How can I go about doing that? The way that you do that is to say select sum. So sum is a function that adds everything up. And the name of the column for us is NA sales from VG Sales Global. So what this is going to do is that it's going to run row by row, and it's going to tally everything up. So sum is, that's what sum does. So let's run the query. Right? So this tells us that for the whole database, we have 4,392,000,000 units sold. This is in millions, so this is it's 4 billion plus units sold within North America for the whole database. So sum adds up all the values. Let's say we want to add a little bit of complexity here, right? Let's say I want to get the total amount of North American sales for the publisher Nintendo, right? Remember we learned about where previously, so this is where this would come in. We key in where, and the name of the column is publisher, right? So we put publisher equal Nintendo. Give me 1 second. BG sales. Oops. Select. Give me 1 second. Let me pull this out. Okay. All right, does anybody have any questions? So let me get back to the Nintendo question, right? So the question was, let's sum up the North American sales, right? So the way that you go about doing that, I made a mistake previously. Sum, and we want to sum up North American sales. And A_sales from BG sale, where publisher. This is something that I didn't introduce previously. If you can use the keyword like to check for strings. So I could put in Nintendo. And run this. Right. So it tells us that Nintendo sold 816 million units throughout the whole database. So sum is a very helpful keyword operator as well. Right. Does anybody have any questions? Is everything good so far? Right. Great. So the next keyword I want to show you is the keyword average. So let's say I want to find what's the average number of units sold within North America. So this is where I'll key in the keyword average, AVG, and let's run it. So this tells us that the average video game has about a 250,000 sold. So AVG is a keyword that helps you find the average. And let me just quickly run through the other keywords so that we have time for the exercises. Some other very important keywords are min. Min helps you find the lowest value. So min is 0 here. And you can also use max. Right? Max helps you find the highest value. So those are some of the very critical keywords that help you aggregate data. I'm going to teach you one final concept before we move on to the exercises so that we have time to run through them. It's called group by. So once again, let's go back, take a look at the whole data set. So all this while, we have been pulling data from individual rows, right? Suppose I want to aggregate data by the platform type, the genre type, or the publisher type. Let's say I have a question. I want to know whether Nintendo or Electronic Arts has sold more units throughout the whole database. How can I answer that question? So the way that you do that is you add this keyword called group by, and you enter the column. So let's say I want to group by the publisher type. So I can put in publisher. And let's say I want to know for each publisher, what's the total number of global sales that they have made for all the video games that they have produced. So in that case, I would put sum global underscore sales. And I want to get the name of the publisher as well, right? So that's why I would put in publisher sum global. Okay, let's run this. So right now, what you find is that this is neat. It tells us for each publisher, how many units have they sold. This is helpful, but remember, we know this. We know how to organize our data. We know how to arrange it. So we know that using order by, we can arrange the results in ascending or descending order. So let's do that. Let's order by. Let's say I want to know which publisher has sold the most number of units globally. So in that case, what would I do? I would say order by sum global sales DESC, descending, because I want the top result to be the highest value. So you run the query, and then you find that Nintendo has actually sold the most units globally. Electronic Arts second, Activision, and so on. So the idea here is that you don't just have the capacity to get results row by row, but you can also aggregate the data. You can kind of cluster it based on the group, and then you can do some data analysis using that as well. Any questions about group by? Group by may not be that intuitive, but after a while, when you try it, it's a lot easier. So any questions before we move on to the exercise? Right, last 30 seconds, any questions? Otherwise, I'm going to share with you the mini quiz, which allows you to try the concepts that we have learned, and then we're going to come together and discuss the questions. All right, so let me now share the link with you. Let me share with you this Intro to SQL quiz link with everybody. So I'm sharing this on our programming exercises. Let me do that on our YouTube channel as well. So take about 15 minutes to work on it, and then we'll come back and discuss the questions. And if you have any questions about whatever we have covered, post it on the Discord server app. I'm here and others are here as well, and we can help you out. So the time right now is about 3:10. Take about 15 minutes, 3:25. Let's reconvene and discuss these questions. All right, the first question, just a hint for those who are wondering how to get started, think about count. Right? Remember, we use count. So think about how you can use count to figure out the number of rows within the whole database. And if you're done, drop a message on the programming exercises channel so that I have a sense of when we should pick back. All right, no worries. We have time. So it's 3:15. Take about 10 minutes. Uh, no rush. The second last question is a bit tricky. So If you get stumped, don't worry, it's a little tricky. If you're a little lost, just post which question is a little tricky, and then we can help you out. Take about 5 more minutes to wrap up. If you have any doubts, if there's any specific question that's stumping you, post it on the Discord server app or our YouTube channel, and we can help you out. So regarding the counting of the we question, let me. So the thing is, when you use a equal operator, when it comes to strings, it's case sensitive. So that's something you need to take note of. It's case sensitive. So that's something you need to take note of. let's just spend another 3 more minutes. Let's wrap up and then let's get back. Yeah, if there's any question that you're having trouble, I'm going to run through all of those questions in about 3 minutes. So no problem. We're going to run through this and we're going to make sure that everybody gets it. Spend the remaining 2 minutes. Let's wrap it up and then let's get back and run through all of those 5 questions. All right, 1 more minute. Let's get back. All right, everyone, let's get back to the main YouTube screen so that we can run through the questions. So just taking a look at the responses that you all sent. Overall, really, really great. The average was about 85 points. We had about 12 responses, and most of you aced all of the questions. It seems like the hardest question was the last one. And I'll go through all of those questions very quickly, spending more time on the last one. So the first question that we had was, how many rows exist in the database? So the way that you go about doing that is, if you want to get the number of rows, the keyword that we use is count, right? So we put count from the name of the table. When we run that, you find that 16,598 is the number of rows that exists within the whole database. So that's the answer to the first question. The second question that we had was, how many video games are available on the platform itself? So once again, this is similar. So in the interest of time, give me 1 second. Let me see which questions I want to prioritize. Yeah, so wait, so second question, let me just run it through because it seems like some people had questions about it. So second question is, well, how many video games are available on the Wii platform specifically, right? So the way that you go about answering that question is, once again, select count, but this is where you need to add a where condition to filter the results. Where platform equal WII. Now, the thing that I want to emphasize here is that it is case sensitive. If you don't want it to be case sensitive, that's where you can use like, but let's just go with equal here. And if you run the query, you find that the answer is 1325. So that's the answer to the second question. Now let's go on to the third question. The third question was for how many video games does the number of units sold in Europe exceed those sold in North America? There's a small typo there, but let's get on. So the way that you answer that question is you put select count VG sales global. That all stays the same, but you want to know, when does the sales in Europe exceed those in the United States? So to answer that, what you do is you type in the EU sales column exceeds EU sales here. EU sales exceeds NA sales. Let's run the query, and the answer you get is 2494. Any questions about all these quiz questions that we just went through? Otherwise, I can keep going. Okay, I'm Mockstove Freak. I'm going to go through that group by question. That question was a little tricky. I'm going through that next. Just give me 1 second. All right, so far so good. Let's go on sequentially. Let's go on to this question. On average, how many units of video games are sold globally? Right, and we want to know the answer to that. So the way that we go about figuring that out is select average AVG global global underscore sales. Okay. And we take away the where condition because we don't want to filter any results here. We just want to know the average. We run the query, and then the answer that we get is 0.5374. Great. So the next question was, how many unique video game publishers are represented in the data set? So the keyword here is unique. So when you think about unique, the keyword you need to think about is distinct, right? So what we do is we put count and then we put in distinct, and we key in the column publishers. So we put this in, you're going to get the answer 579. So 579 was the answer to that question. Now going on to the second last question, and this is the question that stumped a lot of people. It was, which genre of video games have the greatest global sales? And the hint that I gave was, think about group by. So let me explain how this question works. Okay, so we say select. So when you think about which genre of, so when you think about greatest global sales, I was thinking about some. I hope that was clear to everyone. So let me type this out. Okay, so if we want to know the publisher, so you put publisher, and we want to sum up all the global sales, right? So say sum. Let me just take a look at the question here 1 second. Which genre of video games have the greatest global sales? Okay, cool. I'm sorry, I mixed up the question. So select genre sum global. So give me 1 second. I'm mixing up the questions here. Okay, so sorry, let me just back up. The question is on average, which genre of video games have the greatest global sales? So we want to find average here. My bad there. Genre AVG global underscore sales from, we put in the name of the table, right? And we want to group by the genre, right? We don't want individual results, but rather we want to group by the genre. And we want to know what's the highest value. So we want to order by AVG global sales. And we want the top output to be at the top. So we put DESC. And we run the query. And then you find that platform is the highest, has the highest average, right? So does anybody have any questions about this? I know this question was a little tricky. So I'm taking a look at the Discord server app. Yeah, any questions about this group by question, which I think was a little trickier than the other ones? Okay, if everything is fine, let's move on to the last question. The last question was, based on the database, which publisher sold the most number of video games in North America? So that's North American sales that we need to take note of there. So let's do that. So which publisher sold the most number? So in that case, what we do is we say select. So what are the columns we want to get? We want to know the publisher. So we key in publisher. And then we want to get the sum of all the sales. So key in sum NA sales from the name of the table. And then we want to group by the publisher. And we want to arrange the results nicely. So we use the keywords order by sum NA sales DESC. All right, let's run it. And then what you find is that Nintendo sold 816 million units, far greater than any of these publishers, other publishers. So Nintendo was the most popular publisher. So any questions about the final question, or did everything make sense? Right, so I'm taking a look at our YouTube comment section and our Discord server section. Any questions about these? Right. All right, last. Okay, so I'm taking a look at the programming exercises section. Okay, great. Let's keep going. So what we have covered today is just the fundamentals of SQL. We have gotten a grasp of how you query the database, how you get the data, how you filter the results, how you do some basic aggregation functions like sum and average, minimum, maximum, and so on. The next step is really to figure out how you can gather data from multiple tables, because in this case, we just had one simple table to work with. And that's something that we're going to be covering next week. So my initial plan was to run through joins, but I don't have time. So I think that's something that we're going to be covering in the subsequent weeks. But in your inbox, by the end of the day, you should see a simple summary of the content that I have covered for today. So next week, I'm not going to be here, but I'm going to just create like a very simple video so that you can keep your skills fresh. And at the same time, one of the requests that I've gotten so far is would it be nice? Some people said, it'd be nice for us to kind of have practice questions along the way. So that's something that I'm going to be offering as we move along. So across the week, I'm going to be sending out these questions on our Discord server app so that you can keep practicing and keep those skills alive, really fresh and sharp before we move on to the next level. And if you found this class helpful and you want to buy me a coffee, this is the link. So if you enjoyed the class, if you have any feedback, feel free to send me an email or just hit me up on Discord. So thank you, everybody. So this wraps up the first class for SQL. All right, thanks, everybody. Hope you like this class.